Venezuela switches to a new time zone to tackle the energy crisis, and Brazil's president promises to increase tax returns. These are this evening's headlines. My name is Reagan Des Vignes, and this is From the South. Thank you so much for joining us. Large marches took place this Sunday to mark the International Workers' Day, also known as May Day. In Bolivia and Venezuela, the rallies were accompanied by the presidents Evo Morales and Nicolas Maduro, both of whom raised the minimum wage. The crowds of government supporters vowed to defend their respective governments. And another big announcement in Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro has announced a modification of the country's time zone as a measure to tackle the energy crisis affecting Venezuela. The droughts caused by the El Niño climate phenomenon are causing significant energy shortages. Venezuela depends almost entirely on hydroelectric power. Venezuela's right-wing opposition delivered more than 1.8 million signatures to the National Electoral Board earlier today. The signatures are the first step in a referendum process on removing President Nicolas Maduro. To explain this process further, we go to our correspondent Ian Bruce. Hi Ian, can you tell us what are the next steps for the opposition in their push for the recall referendum?
Good evening, Reagan. Yes, indeed. They've delivered those signatures, 80 boxes of them, early today. The next step is to get them verified. That's quite a complicated process in itself. You need to check every one of them, the thumbprint, the identity card numbers, and even use the telephone numbers that they had to put down on the forms as they fill them in. However, there is a dispute here, Reagan, about the timing, because the opposition were given 30 days to collect their signatures. They've collected many more than that, assuming they're verified, in just under a week. But the Electoral Council says they won't start the process of verifying the signatures until that 30-day period is up. The opposition is very much opposed to that, so we'll have to see what happens with that.
Well, Ian, we know that quite a few people have signed and are interested in recalling the president. How are government supporters mobilizing against the push for a recall referendum?
Well, on the one hand, Reagan, the government itself has named a delegation, a commission to accompany the process. They say they want to make absolutely sure that the opposition doesn't indulge in any kind of fraudulent delivery of fraudulent signatures, as they claim they did in 2004. So they want to be involved in the whole process of verifying the signatures or accompanying the verification of the signatures by the electoral authorities. On the other hand, most Chavista supporters I spoke to, for example, on the May Day demonstration yesterday, accept they don't want a recall referendum. They accept that if the opposition complies with all the requisites and the constitutional rules, then that will go ahead, and they're determined to defeat it at the ballot box. And one way they're doing that is of organising quite a few demonstrations and marches to try and raise spirits and demonstrate that support for the Bolivarian government is still pretty strong.
And of course, all eyes are on this to make sure that this follows a certain protocol. Thanks, Ian, for that update. Moving on now, Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff rallied tens of thousands of supporters in Sao Paulo to mark May Day. She spoke to the crowd, largely made up of social movements and worker unions, vowing to fight for democracy and against the impeachment process being reviewed by the Senate. The president was also defiant against the opposition's claims, which accuses her of mismanaging the government's budget. She also promised to increase tax returns.
We are going to change the value of the income tax return for the people. The change will reach 5%, starting this year.
Police and demonstrators clashed in the capital city of Bogotá. Violence erupted after the traditional May Day rally had ended and as police officers were trying to disperse the remaining protesters. Some of the demonstrators attacked the police with rocks, who in turn retaliated with tear gas and rubber bullets. And Colombian authorities have captured and deported Peruvian crime lord Gerson Harvez Calle, nicknamed Snail. He is wanted for drug trafficking, murder, and association with irregular armed groups. Galvez Calle had entered Colombia by land to find refuge in the city of Medellin, where he was living in a luxurious apartment at the time of his arrest. He is believed to be the head of the gang Barrio King, which has terrorized the port city of Callao in Lima, Peru. Clashes were also reported in Santiago, Chile, when police tried to disrupt the two-day May Day protest. Police deployed tear gas and water cannons on protesters who retaliated by hurling objects. The protest was led by the Confederation of Workers, but different social movements and student groups joined the demonstrations. The workers were protesting a recent ruling by the Constitutional Court against a much-anticipated labor reform. Thousands also took to the streets of Peru's capital Lima yesterday in celebration of International Workers' Day. Members of the movements against the candidacy of Keiko Fujimori participated in the marches, remembering the human rights violations of her father, former President Alberto Fujimori. For more from Peru, we go to our correspondent, Rael Mora, who was at the marches. Hi, Rael. It's great to talk with you. Can you give us the significance of the marches against Keiko Fujimori over the weekend, and what impact does this have on her chances at the presidency?
Hi, thanks. There are a number of reasons for the rejection of Fujimorismo by organized labor and the working class. First of all, Keiko's father was responsible for implementing the neoliberal economic system of the 90s through autocratic moves. Those who marched claimed that the system greatly undermines the gains of workers in terms of benefits and job security. In addition, the government of Alberto Fujimori, that Keiko celebrates, persecuted labor leaders, murdering Pedro Wilca just before he was able to launch a national strike that could have changed the course of Peruvian history. Wilca has become the most celebrated martyr of the Peruvian labor movement, and he is widely mentioned at the march. Now, in order to win the presidency, Keiko Fujimori and Pedro Pablo Kuczynski have to gain the support of those who voted for pro-worker candidates. And the goal of the protests, the several protests, including yesterday's, is to remind people why she is the worst option for common working families.
Now, we understand that at the polls, the race is pretty close between Keiko Fujimori and her main opposition, Pedro Kuczynski. Can you give us an update on the campaign trail? What's the latest you have? What do you know?
Yes, all polls show that the candidates are tied within the statistical margins of error for the second round of the presidential elections. Kuczynski has made a move yesterday to attract the votes of workers by signing an agreement with public workers. But Kuczynski has mostly opted for a strategy that reminding people of the dictatorship and the corrupt past of Fujimori. Instead, Keiko Fujimori has been hinting at progressive moves, like criticizing large mining projects, which are responsible for over 100 social conflicts in the country. Likewise, she suggested she will renegotiate natural gas deals with transnational corporations in order to benefit Peruvians. And more recently, she has made a very controversial statement in support of illegal miners who are also destroying the Peruvian natural reserves.
Rael, thank you so much for that update. We'll touch base with you another time. Thanks again. Rael Mora from Peru. The Argentine social movement Tupac Amaru filed a complaint against President Mauricio Macri earlier today after he called the movement a paramilitary organization and accused its leaders of stealing money. The group demonstrated outside the federal court where they filed the complaint. Tupac Amaru has been demanding the freedom of its leader, Milagros Sala, since he was arrested in January after leading a peaceful occupation against government cutbacks. To Paraguay now, where the government has declared a state of emergency over the overcrowding of the country's largest prisons. Tacumbo Prison is one example. It was built to hold 1,500 inmates, but currently houses more than 2.5 times that figure. The state of emergency comes just 2 weeks after the escape of 10 adolescents from a juvenile detention center. The first U.S. to Cuba cruise in 50 years arrived in Havana today with 700 passengers. Havana residents gathered at the wharf in the colonial Old Town as hundreds of U.S. residents waved from the decks, commemorating the historic arrival. Greenpeace Netherlands has released secret documents from the EU-US transatlantic trade and investment partnership negotiations. Greenpeace says the TTIP negotiations should end as the documents reveal that the trade deal undermines democracy and the environment. The documents also show profound disagreements between the EU and the United States.
We've done this to ignite a debate. We want to bring transparency into a scandalously untransparent round of negotiations. It is actually unbelievable that almost 1 billion people in Europe and the US will be affected by those negotiations in almost every area of their lives. Well, that is at least the aim of the negotiations, and they in fact know nothing about it.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with UN Special Envoy for Syria Staffan de Mistura earlier today after Mistura called for the U.S. and Russia to step in due to the increasing violence in Syria. A ceasefire was brokered back in February, but in the past 9 days, over 250 people have been killed in Aleppo, where government and rebel groups are fighting for control. Speaking from Switzerland, Kerry said the violence was an outrage.
In an effort with all of the members of the International Syria Support Group and with Russia particularly, in an effort to restore that cessation of hostilities in those places where it has been most at risk or most shredded.
After years of speculation and false revelations, Australian businessman and computer scientist Craig Wright has come out as the creator of Bitcoin. Wright revealed his cryptographic key to the first Bitcoin transaction to the BBC, The Economist, and to GQ magazine to prove that he was the inventor of the underground payment system. Wright had gone under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto after tax authorities raided Wright's home. He is reportedly working with them to calculate what he owes. Thousands of people hit the streets in the annual May Day marches in downtown Los Angeles on Sunday. The demonstrators advocated for immigration reform, police accountability, and an end to racism. The diverse array of protesters all shared something in common. They were all offended by something that the Republican Party presidential candidate Donald Trump had said. Three bombs went off in and around Baghdad earlier today, killing at least 14 people. Among the victims were Shiite Muslim worshippers conducting an annual pilgrimage inside the Iraqi capital. The largest blast came from a parked car bomb in southern Baghdad, killing 11 people and wounding 30 others. That attack was claimed by the Islamic State militant group and targeted mainly Shiite Muslims who led historic protests on Sunday, storming the Iraqi parliament. 21 people are now confirmed dead after a residential building collapsed in Nairobi, Kenya. And following days of torrential rain, the building further gave way on Sunday, sending rescuers scrambling to save children. According to the Kenya Red Cross, 60 people were still missing, meaning the final death toll could be much higher. The charred wreckage of a helicopter that crashed on April 29th as it was ferrying passengers from a Norwegian oil platform was salvaged on Saturday. All 13 people on board are believed to have died in the crash. 11 bodies have already been found after several hours searching for survivors. Turkish lawmakers met in parliament for a constitutional commission meeting over lawmakers' impunity from prosecution. but scuffles broke out between members of Turkey's ruling AK party and the pro-Kurdish opposition party, the HDP. Members punched and threw water bottles at each other during the heated session. A short break was called to restore order in the parliament. Japanese Paralympics athletes took over the high streets of Tokyo as they demonstrated their sporting skills. The athletes sought to raise awareness of the Games ahead of the Rio Summer Games and the Tokyo Summer Games in 2020. The event proved to be an eye-opening experience for some who had not imagined that playing basketball in a wheelchair could be so difficult. The home of former world boxing champion Muhammad Ali in Louisville, Kentucky was inaugurated as a museum this past Sunday. Ali's brother Rahman Ali, Louisville's mayor Greg Fisher, and both co-owners of the house attended the inauguration ceremony. The house was abandoned until the co-owners purchased it and turned it into a museum in dedication to the boxing champ. And that's our news this evening on Monday. Thank you so much for watching. For more on this and other stories, you can visit our website, telesurtv.net/English. And of course, you can join us on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram for Telesur English. My name is Reagan Des Vignes. Have a good evening. Bye.